Okay, so now we're going to move on to talk about probability, specifically finding a sample space. So the question asks, you flip a coin and then you roll a six-sided die. How many possible outcomes are in the sample space? So we're looking for our possible outcomes. Well, a sample space is just whatever's possible. Okay, so it's any of these outcomes. So we can just say sample space equal possible outcomes. Alright, so I'm going to flip a coin and then I'm going to roll a die. So first thing I do is I flip my coin, right? Two things that can happen. I can have tails or I can have heads. There's only two outcomes. So possible outcomes, it's going to go two different directions. Heads or tails. That's all that can happen. Then, once I've done that, I roll my die. Six-sided die. There's six options, 1 through 6, right? So, there's going to be another branch. Our options after we go heads or tails will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Any one of these could happen. And then similarly, if we rolled tails, there'd still be 6 options for our dice. So that's what could happen. So these options, all of them together are sample space. It's what's possible, right? So what could be our possible outcomes for this? Well, we could roll a heads, so we're going to list them all. We could roll a head and then, or flip a head on the coin and then roll a 1. Or we could flip a head and then roll 2, and so on and so forth, right? And there's going to be 6 options here. If we flip heads, we're going to roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And if we flip a tail, there's going to be another 6 options. So we flip tails, we roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So our sample space includes all of these options. There's 12 possible outcomes, so our sample space is equal to 12 possible results. Now we're going to use that later. If we go on and we look at this concept of theoretical probabilities, right? A theoretical probability is just what's theoretically likely to happen. So they say the outcomes for a specified event are called favorable outcomes from the pool of total outcomes. So a favorable outcome is just whatever, let's see, another way to say that is just what we want to happen. Okay, so what we want. And then out of the total number of outcomes, that's just our sample space. That's just what's possible. And then they denote this as saying the probability of event A, the probability of some event, they call it A, is written as just this. It's probability of A. That's how it's written. Is equal to number of favorable outcomes over total number of outcomes. So what would that look like? Well, if we go to this, our example up top, right? Our sample space, we had 12 possibilities, right? That was the total number of outcomes. So if I wanted to know here the probability of H1, of flipping a heads and then rolling a 1, so probability of H1, that would be equal to, well, this can only happen one way, right? That's our number of favorable outcomes. It can only happen, there's only one way we get an H1. We have to flip heads, roll a 1. So 1 over total number of outcomes. Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 possible things that could happen, right? So we would just put that over 12. So probability of H1 happening is just 1 over 12. All right, that concludes this video.